Hello. So in my last video, I talk about how I have so many ideas yet fail to execute any of them. And in this video, I want to talk about how I am planning and learning to cope with this. How am I learning to manage with the fact that I have so many ideas yet rarely execute them? So let's start with one thing that I didn't mention, one thing that I didn't talk about in that video, in the previous video, is when I say that I have a lot of ideas and ideas are popping up almost easily for me, I didn't mention that when I fantasize about these ideas, it actually feels so good for me. It feels exciting. And the reason for that is because I fantasize. I fantasize about my ideas. How good if my ideas will be realized? How good would it be if I publish the ideas? How good would it be if I succeed with that ideas? And this somehow gives me a dopamine hit. Like somehow my mind is telling me that this feels good. And most importantly, because there is a dopamine hit, my brain thinks that the work is over. My brain thinks that, oh yeah, we already accomplished this idea. Even when in reality, I barely touch it. I barely start working on the idea. So yeah, that's about fantasizing. The reason why my ideas are only ideas and never get executed is because I fantasize too much and I spend way too much of my energy on daydreaming. And it's not great because there is one study by a guy named Oettingen, I believe, Oettingen, Oettingen, when they observe a group of job seekers, the people who fantasize a lot about getting the job and fantasizing about how good it would be if they manage to get the job actually performs less, in a sense that they apply to less jobs, they prepare less, and they get less as many invitation as the other group that doesn't fantasize. So that's problematic. That's very problematic for me because it means that I just fantasize too much. It turns out the problem is so simple. The problem is I just fantasize a lot, and that makes me want to work less. I feel kind of stupid and liberated at the same time because, to be honest, I once thought that the reason that I have so many ideas is because there is something special about me. which it turns out there isn't. I just failed to admit and to be aware that I fantasized too much on my ideas. I daydream too fucking much. And turns out that that's the problem. So yeah, I mean, it feels liberating because I finally understand a little bit more of why that happens, why I have so many ideas yet barely execute them. But yet, yeah, I feel so stupid. So now let's talk about the solution. So the guy that I mentioned earlier, Oettingen, they came up with this method called WOOP, which is WOOP, WOOP, and it's an acronym for something. My first impression when I hear about acronym is I feel so fucking cringe because it feels so much like a corporate thing. It feels stupid. It feels like it's not gonna work. It feels like one of those jargons of self-help people that doesn't really work. But this time, since I do not have any other option of how to deal with this experience that I'm having, I'm gonna give it a try. So, WOOP, whoop. So basically what Ottingen says is, instead of allowing our mind to autonomously run our fantasizing, basically they're suggesting to intercept that pattern where we daydream and add a couple more steps along the way. So the first two steps of WOOP, the W is the wish. What we wish to build. What is our ideas? In my case, what is my ideas? The second part is the outcome. And perhaps this is the part where I fantasize of how good it would be if I get that idea, how my software project will look like, how much audience will it reach, and how cool would I be if that project executed or succeeded. And yeah, so the first two parts is actually the part where it's fun, and this is the part where the dopamine hits so much. Now the third part is the interesting part. This is the obstacle part. Ottingen actually came up with this from his research about mental contrasting. He basically did an experiment where when a certain group of people have a goal of doing something and they visualize or they imagine the obstacle that they might face, it's actually helping them to be more successful compared to their peers that only fantasize about the end result. So for example, people who are trying to lose weight and then instead of like telling the participants of that want to lose weight to just fantasize about how good it would feel for them if they look thinner and more beautiful, Ottingen tells them to visualize the struggle that they might face along the way, like how hard it would be to not binge eat late at night, and how hard would it be to go to the gym and run on the treadmill. The other thing is for students who are trying to get good grades at school. Instead of only visualizing the end result where they get that good score on the test, they suggest to also think about the struggle of studying, the struggle of not knowing something and getting stuck in a problem, maybe asking their peers. So this practice of visualizing the obstacle that you might face along the way is actually helpful, and that's the third step. W, wish. O, outcome. O, obstacle. And then the last part is, the last part, P, is called plan. So the plan portion of this WOOP method actually came from Ottingen's husband's research. If the previous steps came from something called mental contrasting, a concept named mental contrasting, this step actually comes from something called implementation intentions, which where the research is basically when you tell people to get so in detail about where they want to do something, when, where, and what they're trying to do, it turns out that they're gonna be more likely to do it. So for example, if I tell people that I'm gonna go to the gym, I don't go to the gym, let's do something else. let's use something else. Let's use reading, which is something that I do. For example, I want to start learn to read. For example, I want to read something book that I've been wanting to read. if I specify what book do I want to read, when do I want to read it, and where do I want to read it, it's actually making me more likely to do the thing that I said I want to do, instead of getting caught in procrastination and doom scrolling, which what we all do anyway. So that's implementation intention. But in the WOOP method, this changed a little bit into an if-then method based on the previous step. So on the obstacle step, we bring each point, each obstacle that might come along the way, and do an if-then. So for example, if my obstacle is I have self-doubts, so if I have a self-doubt when I'm doing this, then maybe I try to journal, or I try to talk to a friend or to my girlfriend about the struggle that I'm facing, the doubts that I'm having. If, for example, I might not have enough money to publish and distribute my project, maybe like the then is ask for a friend, look for funding, or I don't know, there's so many ways to get money online and to distribute. Or perhaps if I want to distribute, find a way to do organic distribution, organic marketing. So yeah, things like that. Yeah, in my case, I haven't really give a chance to think about it, but I guess those are the two examples. So yeah, I'm gonna give this WOOP method a try and see if this is actually any good, of if it's just any corporate jargon garbage like most of other things. So yeah, I think that's enough for this video. It's been very long. Thank you for listening if you actually get to this point. Bye bye.